and welcome to another session of Informally Formal. I am really excited today because our topic today is of great interest. It should be of great interest to everyone. We're going to be talking about the need for regional cooperation for Bangladesh. And to talk about this very important and exciting subject, we have with us a person that needs no introduction, but nevertheless, Professor Mustafizur Rahman is a distinguished fellow with the Center for Policy Dialogue, or well known as CPD. He was formerly executive director for 10 years, I believe. And before that, he was a professor of Dhaka University, where he taught for about 25 years. Welcome, Professor Rahman.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's indeed a pleasure to have you. So let me just dive into our first question. Why should Bangladesh give special attention to regional cooperation issues at this stage of our economic development? Over to you, Professor Rahman.
Thank you. I think that for Bangladesh in going forward in the 21st century, I think the regional cooperation is the next frontier because I guess I think all the regional countries, if we take South Asia, and when I talk about regional cooperation, I would like to also include China, and it should be Southern Asia. So I think that if we want to deepen our economic cooperation with the Southern Asian countries, we will have to have connectivities, logistic connectivities, transport connectivities, economic connectivities, people-to-people connectivities, which can open new frontiers for our development. Because if we can deepen economic cooperation, it means that we will be able to have production networks, we'll be able to have value chains, we can export more, we can translate Bangladesh's strategic location into a tool of its economic development in going forward. So I think that through regional cooperation, Bangladesh it can be one of the key avenues for Bangladesh to have more exports, to attract more investment, to translate its comparative advantages into competitive advantage. I think regional cooperation could be an important tool.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even though, Professor Rahman, we see a shift in the world to more unilateralism and stuff, I guess started with Brexit and then United States with then the trade war with China and stuff. I believe history would bear witness to the fact that these things can only be temporary. In the long haul, these things don't work. Wouldn't you agree?
I think that even if the examples that you have given, let's start with Brexit. Now, even though UK wants to get out of the European Union, it would like to keep the economic ties with the European Union because it needs the market. Even though Trump was against NAFTA, now they have the trilateral cooperation in another name. So if you look around all the regions, we will see rise of the mega regionals. One can say that yes, WTO as a global multilateral institution is weakening, but on the other hand, we see the rise of these plurilateral arrangements, mega regionals. So the basic idea is that if you can have deeper cooperation with the neighboring countries, then obviously you have access to greater market, you have less hurdle in trading with your neighbors, you can have more investment, and taking advantage of the investment, you can also export more. So I think that realization is very much there. And if we look at, for example, the ASEAN has 10 members, and then it has also 6 bilateral agreements with various countries like India, China, and now they are going for the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, where they have 10 ASEAN countries plus 6, barring India, in fact, but India is, is taking its time. So 15 countries, it will have a population of almost 2.5 billion, and it will be one of the major hubs in the region. So if we take Bangladesh, I think that it will be smart on the part of Bangladesh to keep its eyes open, go beyond SAFTA or beyond BIMSTEC, and also at some point of time be a part of the RCEP, because I think that that's where really the markets will be. And if we can have more market access, taking advantage of the various preferential treatment, then obviously I think that we can develop our trade relations, we can attract investment targeting those markets.
Right, right. Professor Rahman, you alluded to quite a few of the things that I was going to ask you next. So like what I wanted to ask you is the state of regional cooperation at the moment, and what are the important recent developments? You did mention a few. Would you like to talk about it just a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So if we take Bangladesh, we are part of the South Asian Free Trade Agreement. And as part of that, for example, we get zero tariff access to almost all the products in the Indian market. So that's a major advantage for Bangladesh, that whilst other countries have to pay in accessing the Indian market, we can access at zero tariff for almost all products, barring 25, liquor and arms, etc., etc. So that's a big advantage. But the problem is that generally when you have a free trade agreement, you also have the investments coming to your country to take advantage of those preferential treatment. But although India imports about $500 billion, Bangladesh is exporting about $1.2 billion. So it's 1/5 of 1% of Bangladesh's total export of $40 billion. So I think that that is one opportunity that we have. But then we will have to have the supply side capacities to take advantage of the preferential treatment. Then we are also a member of the BIMSTEC Free Trade Agreement. It's taking a lot of time, but hopefully the goods agreement will be signed very soon. So that gives us a foothold in the ASEAN market through Myanmar and Thailand. So if we can really have the value chains and the production networks, the trade facilitation, then we will be able to attract more investment to Bangladesh, which will target these markets, taking advantage of the zero tariff market access that we have.
Right.
But then our environment for investment within Bangladesh will have to be, of course, improved manifold in order to address those challenges.
Right, Professor Rahman, you hit on some very, very critical and very important points. One, you mentioned, of course, BIMSTEC. BIMSTEC, as we know, overlaps with ASEAN because it includes Myanmar and, like you said, Thailand. So there is an overlap. So that's an excellent move. That and the Secretariat happens to be in Dhaka as well, as you very well know. So yes,
one of the very, very few inter-country, organizations which have their headquarters in Dhaka.
Exactly, exactly. So yes, I totally agree with you on that. On the Indian side of things that you mentioned, unfortunately though, two things. One is not just tariff, but they also have some non-tariff barriers when it comes to Bangladeshi exports. So that is something that is of concern to business owners here in Bangladesh. But then I agree with you totally on the fact that we need to have our supply chain and our capacity and the ease of doing business, and all of those other things needs to be in place as well, right?
Yeah, I think you are very right. But with regard to the non-tariff barriers, many of these non-tariff barriers are not specific to Bangladesh, number one, because these are related to certification, laboratory testing, and any country which will be exporting to India, they will have to go through those certification. So the smart thing for us will be to strengthen our certification strength, to have the laboratory testing, to have the SPS, sanitary, phytosanitary capacities, the technical barriers to trade, we will have to address those. And also some of the other trade barriers like trade facilitation. uh, our borders are choking points and control points. They are not crossing points. So hopefully, if we can have the motor vehicle agreements in place, and also I think the coastal shipping agreements which we have signed, all this potentially creates opportunities for Bangladesh. But then I think we will have to have single window at our Benapol Petrapol border. We will have the rivers navigable, and also we will have to do our negotiations in a strategic way, so that we don't lose out to a powerful neighbor. So it
Right,
can be win-win, but we will have to be ready for the negotiations in the right manner.
right. Professor Rahman, would you reflect very quickly on BBIN? Where does it stand?
The BBIN is now BIN because Bhutan has not yet ratified, but the
All right.
other three countries have started their the processes. The standard operating protocols have been done, and I think that we are now ready. But the major challenge here will be that we will have to have the roads ready for the BIN, and also the borders and the trade facilitation at the borders. Those will have to be ready. I think the single window, interoperability of the systems, electronic data exchange, all these will have to be there, so that the borders, as I said, are crossing points, and we can take advantage of the motor vehicle agreement.
Right. So in terms of, Professor Rahman, in terms of regional cooperation, what do you see as the major challenges? You alluded to some. Would you care to reflect on it some more?
Yes, I think the major challenge here is that if we, for example, want to translate our regional cooperation into more exports, more trade, we will have to have the supply side capacities. For supply side capacities, our own investors should find our own country as a good place to invest, and also our foreign partners should find our country as a good place to invest. And then we can take advantage of the preferential market access and access the markets through our exports. And also, I think that you have alluded to the BBIN motor vehicle agreement. For these to be really translated on the ground, we need investment, large investment in infrastructure, in trade facilitation. So that is also another important aspect. The other is the regulatory mechanism, dispute settlement mechanism, the soft part of it. So all these things will have to be in place. So we have some of the fundamentals now, but now major investments will have to be made in translating these potential areas into, into realizing the potentials.
Right, exactly. Professor Rahman, you again hit on something very, very important that in the business community we have been talking about for quite a while, which is the infrastructure spending in Bangladesh. When you look at it as a percentage of GDP, needs to be much higher in countries that we have seen that have come of age, like even in Vietnam, for example, and other countries in the past. Infrastructure spending has been much larger than what we see in Bangladesh. Even though we have seen some increase in the last few years, I think we need still we need to spend quite a large sum of money for us to get infrastructure ready, because that is critically important. Whether we are talking about regional trade, whether we're talking about attracting FDI, that's a basic requirement, right?
Yes, yes, I fully agree with you. You see, for example, our ports, our roads, these will have to have the commensurate capacity if we want to export more, if we want to attract investment more. Let's take Vietnam. You have mentioned Vietnam. I think most appropriate example. Vietnam's GDP is similar to Bangladesh. Ours is about $320 billion. Theirs is under $300 billion. We last year exported $40 billion. Vietnam exported $280 billion. So that's the magnitude of the export. And a large part of that export is foreign direct investment. So I think that infrastructure is critically important. You are very right. And I would give credit to this government that this government really has given importance to infrastructure. And also, if we, for example, want to realize the potentials of the special economic zones, which I think can be a game changer, there also we need a lot of investment. It's good that now some of the special economic zones are being developed by countries themselves. For example, India is coming up with $150 million to develop their special economic zone in Mireshwarai. We know Japan has come in a big way in Matarbari. We are hoping that there will be an industrial belt there. It's part of Japan's Big B, Bay of Bengal integrated growth area. So I think that we are seeing the germane of things to come. But then to realize those, obviously, you are very right. It's just not the public sector investment, but the private sector will also have to come up, and they will have to have the good returns, which can stimulate public sector and private sector investment.
Right. Right. Dr. Rahman, I cannot help, but I have to bring in the Rohingya issue, which is an unfortunate, creates an unfortunate barrier, so to speak, because as you know, China has interest in Myanmar, and so does India, and then we have good relations with both of these countries, but they have been very silent on the topic of Rohingya. As a matter of fact, sometimes it has worked against us. So I wish if we could come to a resolution of the Rohingya issue, then that would really open up regional cooperation and trade. And, some of the links that we talk about from Kunming, all the way down Myanmar to Bangladesh and on to Kolkata and all those things. Any reflections on that, Professor Rahman?
Yes, you have touched a very important, I think, aspect of our trilateral relationship. If I take India, China, in the context of Bangladesh. I think, of course, you have mentioned about Kunming to Kolkata, the K2K, which is the Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar, BCIN economic corridor. So I think it is very important. It was also part of the Belt and Road Initiative. But you are right that Rohingya issue has really solved, if not solved, but it is there, the elephant in the room, and we cannot ignore it. But I think that in this day and in this world, you will have to think in a multi-pronged way. So any one issue should not be, a stumbling block for us to move in other directions which are needed for our country. So I hope that India and China will be part of the solution to the Rohingya issue, and Bangladesh has demonstrated its humane face through its dealing with the Rohingya. But I think that the global community, and particularly India and China, should appreciate that, and we hope that they will come up as part of the solution.
Right, absolutely, Professor Rahman. In closing, I guess I have to ask you, then please reflect on what additional measures, what additional steps do you think we should take to enhance this regional cooperation? So could you...
I think that Bangladesh should be open. It should be open regionalism, and it should not be a mutually exclusive thing. We should keep our eyes open. If it is SAFTA, if it is BIMSTEC, as I said, one day we should also think about being associated with RCEP. I think that for Bangladesh, multilateral trading system is also very important. WTO is an important institution which some of the powerful countries are trying to undermine. But I think that Bangladesh has gained a lot from the membership in the WTO. So our strategy, I think, should be multi-pronged. It should be non-exclusionary. and Bangladesh should try to get into relationships which will benefit it in one way or another. So we should have to be, it should be open regionalism, not closed regionalism.
Right, right. Professor Rahman, like our slogan, our foreign policy slogan is friendship to all, malice to none.
Yes.
Absolutely. I guess with those final words, Professor Rahman, I have to thank you profusely for your valuable time. And I would like to thank our audience for joining us for this very exciting session on regional cooperation, with an invitation for you to join us again next session. Stay safe, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.